everybody and welcome to my review of the Energica Eva Ribelle RS. It's with thanks to English Electric Motor Co that I've had this bike on loan for about 10 days to do a series of videos and a review for you. In that series of videos, I've looked to answer specific questions in much more depth than I could do in a one video review, because obviously with an electric you have to cover charging and range and all sorts of other things that you never even have to consider in an internal combustion engine bike, but you do with this. So I may refer to videos throughout this that if you want to know a lot more information about that aspect, go and watch that video. Okay, well, let's start with some basics. The Energica Eva Ribelle RS is the special version of the Eva Ribelle. I think it basically has some extra carbon fibre and bits and pieces, and if you look on the website you can see all the different levels and spec it up as you wish. That's going to bring me to the price, and let's not hide that. The base model for the Eva Ribelle RS is £25,000. This one with the O-lins and a few other bits and pieces on it, which I've covered in a video which is called A Closer Look, and basically in that video I show what is on the bike, what it's made of, what the optional extras cost and things like that. This one, with all of this, is £30,000. So it is definitely not cheap. My approach to electric bikes has nothing to do with, but what else can I get for the money? It has nothing to do with, is it good for the environment or anything like that. It is a product and I'm trying it for what it is. And as I said in one of my previous videos, if you want an Energica Eva Ribelle RS, it's going to cost that money. It's just that simple. However, what do you get for that money? Well, obviously, as I say, you get a bike made in Italy, you get carbon fibre, you get one of the most powerful electric motors available in a motorcycle at the moment. I think there is actually only one that is marginally more powerful, and the number differences make me think they were trying to beat this one. And with that powerful motor comes some pretty impressive figures, like 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, which I believe is faster than an R1. Just to put things into perspective, this really can be all things. But of course with electric motorcycles, if you have a huge powerful motor, you're going to need a large battery to get you a decent range. Well, this is somewhere where this wins again. If you took it on track and spanked it, I'm told you're going to get about 70 miles. Normal riding, just riding it like any other bike, even it being a little bit leery, you know, when you open it up there, here and there, 120 miles-ish, somewhere around there. I've done a video on range and on charging. However, if you put this bike into its lower modes, you can expect to get considerably more miles than that. But that, of course, is because this bike has also got a very large battery in it. And with that comes weight. This bike weighs 260 kilos. Now, as you'll see when we get out on the road soon, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And with most electric bikes, they are considerably heavier than most internal combustion engine bikes. But because of the distribution being so much lower, it actually kind of leads to a more stable feeling, although there are times that it definitely doesn't do that, and I say I'll get to that when I get riding. Now you may think because it's got a particularly powerful motor and a large battery in it, the charge time is going to be a long time. Not so. The Eva is actually the fastest charging bike available at the moment, commercially, as I can tell from what I've looked at. This can do DC charging, so that is the CCS plug. It will charge the bike from about 20% up to 80% in around 40 minutes. It is really impressive. At 80%, you're going to have about 100 or so miles range for normal riding, more if you're more careful. That's the key to electric bikes. If you want to extend the range, just put it in a lower mode, drive slower, it will use considerably less power. I, of course, am just having fun on these bikes, so I tend to spank them around a bit. But I feel like that's the most important thing, because most people say, well, I want it to be comparable to an internal combustion engine, so I'm going to want to be able to ride it like I do. So if I ride these bikes like I would a petrol, and I find that this is now an acceptable level, which I think this bike is now reaching that point, I think most people who are on the fence anyway with electrics will say that's actually pretty good. Not with the price, obviously. What we want is to see this sort of performance, or a bit slower, because not everyone needs this sort of performance. You know, this sort of charge time, this sort of size battery, but I know most people would like to see it for about 1/3 of the cost. And that will happen, but it can't happen now because this is early days and this is literally on the cutting edge of what electric bikes can do at the moment. Looks-wise, I think the Eva looks fantastic for an electric bike. Obviously this has got a rack on it for the luggage system, which I have covered in the closer look video, and also talk about the costs of the luggage for this that's available for it. There is one thing also about the looks that I feel has been missed, which is it so obviously should have some red here. Almost like there should be like a binnacle of red going over the lights, leaving the black internal, because obviously this bike is black and red, but the front end just kind of gets lost in pictures. Now the front end, I can see some people not liking it, maybe. What I can also see is a smiley little face. Look at it. Oh, look at you, so cute. I couldn't help but notice that as soon as I saw it, and now all I see on it is a little smiley face. Proudly made in Modena. Now, as I say, if you want to know more about the charging and all those sorts of things and range, watch that video. However, just to show you here, the way you charge this bike is you open this, and in here you have that is the Type 2 charger for AC charging, if you wish to do that, or your 3 kilowatts at home. But you pull this one out and you can do your DC charging. There should be another rubber cover, but the TV production company that had this before me lost it, as well as dropping one of these into another one of these. You can see there is some damage on this one, but it did take it quite well. You know, this is plastic, a plastic cover, and although it's scratched quite badly, it's not cracked or anything like that. The carbon fiber's been scratched at the front, which is obviously sacrilege. And this side panel's got quite a lot of chipping out of it, and a piece missing here. But, I mean, it's not too bad considering, but I'm sure they'll get that fixed. It's just they didn't have time to do it between me getting the bike because it was all arranged. In the modes video, I cover the controls, but basically it's quite simple. Obviously you have your throttle, you have a button for cruise control here, which its position is a bit weird because when you're riding along you have to press that at the speed you want it to start, but obviously that's a bit difficult to do it like this. But so what I end up doing is coming across and pressing with this hand. If you then press and hold the set button and click right, it will go up 1 mile an hour, click down, it will go down 1 mile an hour. You can accelerate up, so say you set it at 30, you can accelerate off to whatever speed to overtake someone, let go of the throttle and it will drop back down gradually to 30 miles an hour, and it will stop if you touch the brake, like most other bikes with cruise control. There is a heated grip switch here if you have the heated grips, which this bike doesn't have. High beam, low beam, you know, pass light, everything pretty normal here. Your indicators and hazard light combined, you just press that for 2 seconds and the hazard lights come on. Talking of lights, in an earlier video you did see me mention I had an issue where this basically said there was a fault with the indicator and the indicators just stopped working. I turned the bike off, turned it back on, and it seemed to come back. I think I solved that. I think it was just a loose connection on one side, probably related to this being knocked over, but it was quite good that it instantly said to me, instead of it just flashing double the speed, it said, warning, indicator failure. This is like the kill switch, but it's also like the go switch, but it also selects slow forward and reverse, because yes, this bike has got a slow forward and reverse. It's called a parking mode, just so you basically don't wang the throttle open and go flying into something. It gives you more finite control. Is it needed? No, but it is handy to have the reverse. We have a TFT screen on this bike, which I've shown more in that other video also. You basically have like a rev bar at the top, which gives you your power and regen. If you see, this is the point of regen, this is the point of power, and hitting red line, you get big bright lights around here knowing how much power you're using at the time. On this screen, it gives you basically everything you need to know without too much information. Time, temperature, miles an hour, your battery level, the range that you have remaining, which changes on how you've been riding, how many miles you've done if you've got trip and things like that. It'll also show you where the traction control levels are at. It will tell you the temperature of the bike, because obviously electric bikes can overheat, but I've had no problems with that. This has a water-cooled controller and motor. Again, I've talked more about that in the closer look video. There is a switch on the back here that is kind of hidden, and that gives you your modes. Basically, on the left-hand side, it gives you Eco, Urban, Rain, and Sport. Those are all individually different. Just know that Eco will make this bike ride like a 125, like 55 mile an hour top speed, and Sport is full-on power. The ABS can be switched on and off as you request, and the regen can be on off, low, medium, and high. Off being that it will freewheel with no engine braking and no regen. High being it's so strong that you don't really need to brake into corners. You know, you can roll off, use the regen up to the apex, and then just roll back on the throttle again. If you get used to doing it, it's quite nice. Now, if you press the same button for 2 seconds, you're going to get the traction control options, which gives you levels 1 to 6 and on and off. If you turn the traction control off on this bike, it will wheelie. It is expensive, but you do get some top trump things with it, like the fastest charging you can get currently, 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, which is going to beat pretty much any 1000 out there, normal 1000. And of course, it's going to run out of ideas, this bike, at around 125 miles an hour, whereas the petrols, you know, are going to go up to 200, basically. But in today's roads, what's more usable? And on that note, let's get out there. Right, first things first. Well, I'll show you how you start this bike. You hold the brake, hold the switch, and it says go. And now we can go, as you can see. If you press and hold that again, it says look behind, and you can reverse. There is a log behind me, so I can't go too far backwards. It'll do about 3 miles an hour backwards. Press and hold it again. It will go back to the other one. Sorry, what I meant to say was press it once, and it goes to slow movement, which is slow forward. And this is it. So you can see this is a parking mode. However, put it in its go mode. Oh, and it's a little bit quicker. And you may also notice the noise. The reason this bike makes this noise is because it has a straight cut tooth transmission from the motor to the sprocket. This is indeed sprocket and chain driven, which is unusual for an electric, but it's good because it means you can adjust your ratios. This is very dodgy, this road. Now, straight cut tooth transmissions or straight cut tooth gears have benefits and disadvantages. Benefit, no torque loss. So, you know, you're getting all the torque from the motor, and that is a lot because that is 210 Newton meters. Or is it 215? It's a lot. The disadvantage or advantage of straight cut gears, depending on how you look at it, is they are noisy and they whine. Now, this noise actually becomes quite addictive. You might not like the sound of it right now, but for me anyway, it became very, very addictive. Really enjoyable. It goads you along. It sounds like a spaceship, but it also sounds so people can hear you coming. Now, comfort and ergonomics. I am 6'4", as you may well know, and for me, I do find that this hyper-naked position is a little bit uncomfortable after a bit of time. My knees are a little bit higher than I'd like them. The seat is a little bit, well, I say it's firmer, but it's kind of rounded, and that leads to just after a couple of hours of riding, you kind of want to get off and stretch your legs. As I say, I'm sure if you were slightly shorter than me, you wouldn't have nearly the same problems. However, my back's comfortable because I am sat upright, my arms are quite long, so, you know, I'm slightly leant forward, but mostly upright. Now, if you've seen my previous video doing a review of the Zero SRF, I mentioned how that's basically my new dream bike because I absolutely loved that thing. It was amazing. And this obviously has the potential, because it's another electric, and a similar style, to take that off, you know, off the podium and this replace it. Is money no object? You know, this is dream bike territory information, so you know, it's nothing to do with price. It's all to do with riding and comfort. And I still prefer the Zero SRF because it was more comfortable for me. And from my memory, the suspension was more forgiving. The suspension on this obviously is a couple of £1,000 worth of Öhlins, and it is good. However, because this bike is very heavy, it sometimes isn't great. In fact, one time when I was doing about 50 miles an hour down a particularly bumpy road, I hit one bump and it sent me arse out the seat by about half a foot because it compressed and it pinged. You have to hold on to this bike. Now, that is relatively easy because obviously you can get your knees under the tank and clamp onto it, but be aware that the suspension, although it is good, you do feel the weight of this thing occasionally when it starts getting very bumpy. Now, when you're at a constant speed, you definitely don't hear the whine quite so much, but it is there. It is more noticeable when you get on and off the throttle, so at slower speeds around town and things like that, people definitely hear this, and it grabs their attention because they're like, what is that? Rather than, oh, there's a motorcycle coming. as I say, the performance on this thing, admittedly it doesn't get above 125 mile an hour. The Ego, this very similar version of Energica, can do 150, but this only does 125. But on today's roads, do you need much more than 125? I mean, you don't technically need more than 70, but let's not like lie to ourselves. We all like, you know, we ride bikes for like being fast, but generally I don't go over 100 miles an hour. I don't need to. The roads are never open or free enough to really do that. So what's more important to me is grunt and acceleration and feel at slower speeds. And this is enjoyable to ride at slower speeds. It's got massive acceleration. It ticks all those boxes without the ability to go 150 mile an hour. Maybe for you, you want something that will stop you from going over 125 mile an hour. Some people can't help themselves. Now obviously this suspension has not been set up for me. I would very much be interested in trying this suspension out, tuned for me, so it's the best it can be. I mean, maybe this is actually doing fantastic considering the weight, and it's the Öhlins that are making up for that. If you had a normal set of forks on this, it would be an absolute nightmare. I doubt it, but it's possible. Now with that suspension and the weight of the bike, you have to be aware of that in corners. It does corner very nicely because it's got the weight down low. However, I can feel the tyres working at times, and you're like, oh, I'm surprised to feel the back end doing that at this point, and then you're like, yeah, but it's got a lot of weight behind it. But for this sort of stuff, it's an absolute joy. Very easy to ride, obviously, with no clutch. The throttle is very, very smooth and progressive. It is, you know, it's got to be quite sharp because you've got a lot of motor going on here and you don't want it to be dull and unreactive, which putting it into things like the eco mode can make it feel that way. But, you know, you choose your modes. Another nice thing about this bike is the fact that it doesn't reduce your power over time too much. There is some reduction as it gets towards the lower ends of the battery. However, other electric motorcycles, when you get to about 70% on the battery, it starts tuning down the power it gives you, and it keeps tuning it down and tuning it down. And the reason it's doing that, it wants to give you a bit more range, and I can understand why the companies want to do that, but I don't want a bike that only works to its full potential 30% of the time. I want it to work all the time, and if that means that I get 5 or 10 miles less range, let me have 5 or 10 miles less range, but at the full power. As I say, this bike, right down to 30 odd percent, 20%, doesn't seem to curtail the power too much. There was a point in my range test where I basically went up a slip road, gunned it, and for a split moment the motor sort of went, oh maybe not, and then continued. And I don't know what that was about, and if it was traction control or what. On the dash there was nothing to really give the idea other than the power indicator went from red to green for a moment and then back again. It was like no, too much power, we haven't got that. Oh, I have it back. Dunno, not something I've really experienced before or since. Again, not full throttle. Honestly, when you fully open this bike up, you have to hold on, because it doesn't come like a normal bike where it builds. It just hits you like a wall up the arse and you just move. And if you're not holding on, your body's going backwards. It's very easy to ride at any mile an hour. In fact, this bike will crawl at 1 mile an hour. A lot of the electric bikes kind of have this like, I'm not on, ka-dung, okay, that's 3 miles an hour, I'm off. This just such tiny amounts of like increments in the power, and you can just pull away so much smoother than I've experienced with pretty much any other bike, electric bike that is. Not saying that they're particularly clunky, you know, you get used to the way that they work, but they do feel like they kind of have a minimum on. This feels like it has no minimum on. You do have to be respectful and understand that, yeah, this thing's flipping quick, but it's also flipping heavy, which means it takes a lot to brake. And yeah, the Brembos on it are very good, as you can see. However, you did notice there was an amount of continuing on there. I could have gone a bit harder, but I'm trying to be a little bit more careful with this, and you know, I don't want to scratch it any more than it's already been scratched. However, you do have to respect the fact that physics exist, And if you accelerate 268 kilos up to X amount of miles an hour, it's going to require X amount of force to slow the thing down, and that may take a little bit more time. So be a bit more sort of aware of that fact, because it looks like it should be a super light, agile, hyper naked, and it kind of feels that way until you start pushing it in the corner here and you start feeling the weight of it pushing sideways. But when you need to brake, that is when you're going to feel the weight. It's hidden so well by this immensely powerful motor that you just wouldn't notice. So that leads to the question, where is this bike's place in the market? Is it just an expensive toy for people with a lot of cash? To a point, yes. It's a £30,000 electric bike. It is certainly not a necessity. And if you need a machine to do a job, there are other bikes at the moment that will do the job of this bike. So it's not going to be that's the only option I have. This will be a choice thing. And for that reason, I don't think there's any great specific reason anyone's going to buy one of these, in the sense of I said I don't think people are going to buy these for commuting. And someone said to me, well, I did. And I'm like, well, that's fine. Okay, cool. I might say, well, I don't think anyone's going to really necessarily, even though the charging is fantastically quick on this, I'm not sure if I was going touring, unless I specifically want to go touring on an electric, that I would choose an electric to go touring on. But of course, there will be people that will and do that. Will do that. And more power to them. There is also the aspect of it, of course, as I've mentioned before, and some people don't like this, but look, I'm in the same boat as you, right? Just because something is a lot of money, like you could not afford it, or it's a lot of money compared to how much you earn a year, that doesn't inherently make it a bad product, and it doesn't mean that no one's going to buy it, because there are some far, far richer people out there than you and I. I could never afford this bike, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate what it is. Okay, I've put the cruise control on to 19 miles an hour, and it's going to maintain my speed both downhill and uphill. One of the cheaper electric bikes I rode last year, this year, I can't remember, it limits its power output rather than the speed, so when you hit a hill it would slow down. But this is using the regen and the motor to even it out and just make me do 19 miles an hour no matter what the gradient is. There's no drop a gear and disappear, it's just twist and go. But this is twist and go in a way that I don't think they really meant in the past. It's more like twist and gone. Rear brake, not very effective. Hits anti-lock very quickly, doesn't do a huge amount to slow you down, but it's good for control, and that's kind of what it's there for. You've got the regen on this thing, like engine braking. You've got the Brigg Brembros, the mighty Brigg Brembros. The big Brembos do slow you down very efficiently. Oh. I think I've probably covered everything I need to with the Eva Ribelle RS. It is one hell of a machine. It is one hell of a price to go with one hell of a machine. But it exists. It is a thing. And if you've got the cash flow and you basically want a toy which will scare you, but also could be very enjoyable to use, then this is something I would check out. English Electric Motor Co. do lots and lots of test rides to give you the opportunity to experience what it's like to ride one of these, because they know, for a lot of people, they're a bit, I'm not sure about that, I don't know if I like that. They are quite smart, which is that just let them get on it. They come back, yeah, I'll have one. Yeah, exactly. You have to experience it to understand why it's good, and not everyone will, draw the same conclusion that this is what they like. If you're set in your ways, you're set in your ways. I love petrol bikes as much as anyone else. But what I really like, what I really love, is motorcycles. And motorcycles can be whatever you want. And actually, if you want to bring this up, a motorcycle should actually be called an engine cycle, because it has an engine in it, not a motor. This has got a motor in it, so technically motorcycles have always been named wrong. We ride engine cycles, this is a motorcycle. So, this is a real motorcycle. But you know what I mean. I bikes, man. I don't care if it's 125, 50cc, 1200, 2.5 litres, it's 11 kilowatts. It doesn't matter. It's two wheels and a seat and some brakes, and you just get out there and enjoy it. Now sure, If for some reason that machine is no good, I'm going to say I don't like it. I don't like that about it. It's not good. But if I do like it, I'm going to say I like it. And it's not because it uses, you know, chemical energy opposed to electrons. Although technically it's still a chemical process in a battery like this, isn't it? So, it's just, you know, it's just a different form of chemical energy. Should we leave this here? As I say, I've got all the other videos talking about this bike that really go into depth into different things, and if you want to see me buzzing around on this thing, then put the first ride on. Even if you're like, I don't like this bike, but I think that is a fair assessment of it, please hit the like button. You are not liking electric motorcycles, you are liking my video. If you are not subscribed to this channel, and you like my approach to things, then please do consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm on my way to 100k, and I only want to hit it so I can get a play button. I won't care after that. And if you'd like to help support this channel, and this is actually far, far more important, this channel is made possible by the support of the audience. This is my full-time job. 0.3% of my audience is who makes this possible by supporting me through Patreon for as little as $1 a month. For that, you get videos early, you get to ask questions. You also get to ask questions about the bike while I still have it, and I can kind of answer questions while I have it for you. At the point I am recording this review, only one video on this is online, the first ride. Every other video that's been on Patreon for like a week now, or coming up to that sort of a time, isn't live yet. So I can't like go backwards and forwards. Horses don't mind it. Something does surprise me. I always thought the horses and dogs would be freaked out by this noise, but they're more chill about it. Anyway, stop talking and end the video. Huge thanks for watching. Big thanks for English Electric Motor Co for lending me this one. And I will be doing lots more electrics in the future because we're going to see a lot more of them, whether you like it or not. Catch you next time.